over the last few weeks here, Jesus the King. We're looking into the book of Matthew. And in the book of Matthew, Jesus is presented as a king. And we looked at Jesus as the sovereign king and looked at Matthew 19 and 20 as he told that parable that seems to be unfair, that God cares for people even if they make a decision late in life or at different times. Last week we looked at the servant king, the sovereign king, then the servant king. And Jesus said those powerful words. You know what it's like in the world. The rulers lord it over and they flaunt their leadership. Not so among you. Not so among you. If you want to be a leader, you'll be the servant. If you want to be first, you'll be a slave. The very words that he used. And today we want to look at the sight-giving king, and I draw your attention to Matthew chapter 20 and verses 29 to 34. And there we see this very interesting situation. There's a crowd of people following Jesus who have their physical sight, but they're actually blind to what's really going on. And there's two blind men, and they cry out, showing that they actually could see what the truth is. Beginning with verse 29, let me read it from the New Living Translation. As Jesus and the disciples left the town of Jericho, a large crowd followed behind. Two blind men were sitting beside the road. When they heard that Jesus was coming that way, they began shouting, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." "Be quiet," the crowd yelled at them. But they only shouted louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." When Jesus heard them, he stopped and he called, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord," they said, "we want to see." Jesus felt sorry for them and touched their eyes. Instantly, they could see, and they followed him. What a great account. Jesus had just been teaching his disciples to be servants. And now he has an opportunity to show them what servanthood really looks like. Just two parts. This is a very short passage. There's the cry of mercy, and there's the call of grace. Let's look at the cry of mercy first. This account, by the way, you'll find also in Mark 10 and Luke 18 with some little variations. And that's, we've said before, that the fact that the gospel writers saw things a little differently is not alarming to us. In fact, it's actually a proof that these were real humans inspired by God. It wasn't one man writing a script. If one man would have written the Bible, then of course they would have put all the details the same. But Holy Spirit inspired different men to write the word. And so in one of the Gospels, two of the Gospels, it says one man that was blind, and they named him, John names him as Bartimaeus. Excuse me, not John. Luke names him as Bartimaeus. And in one of the Gospels, it says they were going into Jerusalem. The other two says they were going out of Jerusalem, or Jericho, not Jerusalem. Stop and get all your facts right, Ken. Okay, now, the fact that if you want to synchronize it, it's fine, because there are actually two Jerichos. There's the old Jericho, the one that was destroyed when Joshua and the troops came in at the beginning, and then they built a new Jericho, and somewhere in between could have been where these blind men would be. So for some, they were saying, we were coming out of the old and we were just about to go into the new. I don't think you really have to worry about putting those together, but if it troubles you, that's one way you can look at it. So they're leaving Jericho, and there's a crowd of people going with Jesus. They sensed that there was something going to happen. This was his last journey to Jerusalem. And on the side, there's two blind men sitting there. Now, today we have schools for the blind, and we have programs for the blind, and they can make it But in those days, there was nothing like that. And so a person born blind was condemned to be a beggar all his life. That's all he could do. And on top of that, the general public thought that there was something wrong with them besides their eyes. If you read the John's account where Jesus healed the blind man, the people wanted to know who sinned. Was his parents sinned, or was he a sinner? Even though he was born that way. And so there was kind of a stigma about being blind because somehow people thought, oh, that was a punishment of God. And so these two men sitting on the side begging were kind of the least of the least, if you will. And Jesus is coming. And they heard, it says, that he was coming. And they began to be excited. They heard about Jesus. They heard about his miracles, how he fed the multitudes, how he walked on water. But probably most dear to their heart was they had heard that Jesus could make the blind see. In Matthew chapter 9, he had brought sight to a blind. And so these two men, they were determined to be heard. And they began to shout. They weren't on the side saying, oh, I hope he stops here. They were shouting. And there's a bit of a desperation in there. They had to be heard. There was hope in their cry because they were saying, Lord, have mercy on us. You're the one that can help us. And there was a cry of faith involved as well because they called him Son of David. Son of David. Now, to pick up the reference of that, you go back to Samuel when God is talking to David, and he says this, furthermore, the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, David, a dynasty of kings. And when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong. Your house and your kingdom will continue before me for all time. Your throne will be secure forever. Now, we know that the king that followed David was Solomon, and he had a great kingdom. He had great power. He was wise man, just like Miguel, who was coming to the front. He was a wise man. I only have one problem with his wisdom. Why in the world did he marry so many wives? I don't quite understand that part. But he was not the one that's spoken of here. His kingdom would not continue for all time. His throne was not secure forever. This was the way that the Jews referred to the Messiah that was coming, the anointed one of God. And so these men sitting on the sidelines, there's a crowd following Jesus who are not quite sure what's going on, and they're kind of curious. They think maybe he's going to do something good for them. Maybe he would feed them. Maybe he would do a miracle and they could watch. But these men were crying out, you're the Son of David. You're the Messiah. And the crowd said, be quiet. Isn't that just like the crowd? Be quiet. Don't bother him. He's busy. Man, and besides, you're nothing. Don't be bothering Jesus. And it says when Jesus heard them, he heard them above the crowd. He heard them above the people saying, be quiet, don't bother him. And he heard the voice of their desperation. You know, God hears us when we cry out in earnest to him. I think of the story of Moses. And when God met him at the burning bush and he said, you're going to go and get my people out. And, Moses was not happy at all. He threw up every excuse he could think of. But one of the things that God said to him there, I've heard their cry. I see their suffering. And when Moses got into Egypt and they gathered the leaders of the Jewish people, that's what he told them. God has heard your cry. God has seen your suffering. And that's what impressed them so much. They thought they were forgotten. They thought that God had given up on them, that there was no hope. And to hear that God had heard their cry and had seen their suffering, opened their hearts. It says that Jesus stopped. Now, to you and me, that might not seem very powerful. But think about it. Jesus was on his last journey to Jerusalem. He was going there to be betrayed and beaten and ultimately die upon a cross. Had a lot of things on his mind. But he wasn't too busy to stop. He stopped. God is never too busy to care for those who have needs. And he called to them and he asked them. Now, if you were part of the crowd or I was a part of the crowd, we might have thought that was a strange question, yeah? Here's two blind guys and Jesus says, what do you want? What did they want? A Big Mac? You know, what did they want? Some money? Did they want a house? No, it was obvious, but they needed to speak it with their own words. He wanted them to ask. James 2:4 says, you want what you don't have. And so you scheme and kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, and you can't get it, so you fight and wage war and take it away from them. All the wars that have ever been fought on the earth was for something that didn't belong to them, and it didn't belong to the people that had it. The earth belongs to the Lord. But he ends this verse by saying, you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. You don't ask God for it. When we pray, you know, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with praying that somebody get well, or praying that something happens in the right way to help us. But sometimes deep within us there is a desire, a longing for something far more significant, and we don't say it. We don't say it to God because we're afraid somehow that it won't happen, and then we'll be disappointed, and somehow we hold back. Well, these guys didn't hold back. They said, Lord, we want to see. We want to see. And it says Jesus touched their eyes. I mean, how else would he demonstrate what he's going to do? He touched their eyes. I love, if you read through the Gospels, look at the things that Jesus touched. One of them was a leper who came to Jesus. Now, leprosy was a disease of the skin, and people could see it, and anybody who had that disease had to live outside the town and stay away from people. And in fact, when they came close to people, they had to cry out, unclean, unclean. And a man came and bowed before Jesus and said, if you will, you can cleanse me. And Jesus reached out and he touched him. Can you imagine what the crowd did at that point? They all went, he's contaminated. You know, he didn't have a mask on. Jesus touched their eyes. He knows how to touch where we have needs, doesn't he? And he healed them. Literally, it says they looked up. Literally, they opened their eyes to see that it was Jesus reaching out to them. What a great sight for their first sight, yeah? Here's Jesus, the one who healed them right in front of them. We've told some of you that when our daughter-in-law was in her last days, one of the mornings she woke up and she looked at Matthew and she said, "Oh, it's you." And Matthew was a little surprised and he said, "What do you mean?" She said, I thought maybe I would wake up and see Jesus this morning. 2 mornings later, she did wake up and see Jesus. But it says they could see and they followed him. Now, chapters and verses in the Bible are really nice because they help us find things. But sometimes when you come to the end of the chapter, what do? You stop. You just think, oh, okay, that's a break. There's really no breaks, okay? Look at chapter 21. As they were approaching Jerusalem, God began to leave. What's the next major event that happened? The triumphant entry. What did the people say? Praise God for the Son of David. Who do you think was out in front of the crowd? I don't know. It doesn't tell us, okay? But I think these two guys were. I think they were shouting louder and harder than anyone else. Praise God. And people probably said, hey, are you guys on something? Is there a problem here? And they said, no. You see this man? We were blind, but now we can see. That's something to shout about. There's some lessons that we need to draw from this passage. One is that Jesus is never too busy or occupied to hear your call for mercy. He's never too busy. He's never too occupied. The Bible says that he never slumbers or sleeps. He's always available. Those times in the night when you cried, he heard you. He heard you. Those times when you felt overwhelmed by the world around you, he saw it. Those times when you were hurt deeply by others, he felt it. He's never too busy. We should never be ashamed to admit that we desperately need him. Desperately need him. You know what happens? Someone has written that there's no atheists in foxholes. When the war is going on, people start crying out to God. When people find out that they have a terminal disease, what do? They begin to pray and ask for God's help. We don't need to be ashamed to ask God for help. I went, when I was in seminary, a bunch of us seminarians, we went to a juvenile delinquent compound, if you will, and we were just talking to the people there. It was kind of interesting because we were about the same age as some of them, and one of them said, "Oh, I don't want Christianity. It's just a crutch." I thought, yeah, I tell you what, in a few weeks, Alec's going to be happy to have a crutch. They're going to do some surgery on his knee. When you break a leg, you need a crutch. I don't know if Christianity is a crutch or not, but I know that we desperately need him. We should ask for specifics. Oh, number 3, we should never let the crowd hinder us from seeking him. The crowd tried to quiet them. Imagine that. These guys are blind and they're crying out for mercy, and the crowd says, be quiet. Don't bother him. The crowd is always in the way, isn't it? Remember when the 4 men wanted to bring a man to Jesus? It says they couldn't get to the door because of the crowd. I love those 4 men. I love their creativity. They went up on the roof. They tore open the roof and let him down through. By the way, I think they paid for the roof later. I really do. The crowd got in the way. Today, the crowd is saying to you, oh, don't get so excited about Jesus. Get excited about soccer, yeah, but don't get excited about Jesus. Get excited about these other things, but don't get excited about Jesus. The crowd always wants to quiet the truth. We should ask for specific needs. Specific needs. Like I said, it's okay to ask for little things. If you pray for parking spots, it's all right. I know how you feel. I've been there, okay? But what are the real needs of your heart? Do you bear those before God? You should. Tell him exactly what you want. And then we should become cheerleaders for Christ. We should be the ones leading the charge and shouting out, hallelujah, the Son of David has set me free. You know, the Bible often speaks of spiritual blindness. Probably Jesus as much dealt with that as he did with physical blindness. In John 9:39, it says, then Jesus told him, I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they are blind. In Matthew 23, he was arguing with the Pharisees, and he said, blind guides, What sorrow awaits you? What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, you Pharisees, hypocrites? For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb garden, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. Blind guides, he called them. You strain the water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, but you swallow a camel. Are you blind to what God is doing in this world? Are you blind to his mercy? Here's what you need to do. These men set the stage for us, didn't they? We need to come desperately and plea for mercy. Oh God, have mercy on me. We have all sinned. We fall short of the glory of God. We need to persistently seek him despite what the crowd says. The crowd says, oh, you Christians, you're so fanatical. I hope that's how you're known. I hope you're known as a fanatical Christian, one who really believes and who lives that way. Know that God hears us when we call. Jeremiah 29:12 says, in those days when you pray, I will listen. And verse 13 says, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. What a wonderful promise. The next thing that I have, and I think I put it on your sheets as well, it's a quote, and it was written so well, I thought, I'm just going to use it as a quote. God is always at work in my waiting. I am to be patient and boldly persistent in prayer. God delights in doing things that are too hard for me, and always in response to my trust in him. Isaiah 49:23 says, then you will know that I am the Lord. Those who hope in me will not be disappointed. Listen to this last sentence. The Lord rises to show compassion, runs to the returning, rejoices over us with singing, rewards those who earnestly are seeking, and is the restorer of our souls. What beautiful pictures those are. And if you are acquainted with your Bible, you'll see every one of those comes out of a wonderful story that either Jesus told or actually was a part of his life. He shows compassion. He saw the multitudes and he said he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Do you know how dumb sheep are? Without a shepherd, they'll just wander off and get lost. They'll fall in a ditch. They'll get turned over. Do you know if a sheep is turned over, he can't get up by himself? If they have no shepherd. That's what happens to us without Jesus. We wander off. We're looking for something better, but we can't find it. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves stumbling and we're in a position we can't even get up. He runs to the returning. Isn't that a beautiful picture of the prodigal son? The father saw the son a long ways off, and he ran to him, and he threw his arms around him, and he embraced him, and the son smelled like pigs. That's what he had been doing, feeding the pigs. The father didn't care. He brought him back, said, my son was dead and is now alive. He rejoices over us with singing. There's a verse in Zephaniah that actually says that he sings over you. Think of that. When you walk with God, it is so pleasing to him that he sings over you. Who sings over you, huh? I know there's a few couples probably that sang songs to each other. My best friend, I was his best man in his wedding, and he sang in his wedding. I thought, oh my, I would die right there, right? I'm not going to sing in my wedding. Right before the wedding ceremony, he couldn't remember the words. So I had them all written on my hand. I'm standing behind him. You know, when he sang every word without a problem. Those who love you sing over you. Those who want you to be part of their life, they sing over you. It says he sings over us. He rewards those who earnestly seek him. He is a restorer of our souls. There's one more thing we need to understand about this passage. This was the last time Jesus went through Jericho. Last time. These two guys are sitting there, people saying, be quiet, and they thought, well, okay, maybe next time there won't be so many people with him, and maybe it won't be a disruptive, maybe we should just wait. Aren't you glad they didn't do that? They're glad they didn't do that. This was the last chance. You say, well, but I'm young. I have lots of opportunities. You don't know that. You don't know that. Right now, we're visiting and praying with a young man who has a 2.5-year-old daughter, and he's in the final stages of cancer. And at least he has time to deal with it. You know as well as I do, there are people that get out in the traffic and get in a wreck and they're gone in a moment. You say, are you trying to scare us? No, I just want you to understand you have no guarantee for tomorrow. There's no guarantee that you're going to live forever. In fact, there's a pretty good guarantee you're not going to live forever on this earth. You're going to live forever with him. Isaiah 55:6 says, seek the Lord while you can find him. Call upon him while he is near. You got up on time. You set your clocks back. You got dressed. You all look very nice. And you came to church. I hope you came not to hear me, but to be in the presence of the Almighty. He is here right now. Is there a heart cry that you want to cry out to him? We're just going to bow our heads and just be silent for a few moments. If there's a cry in your heart, it might be, Lord, let me see, or Lord, forgive me, or Lord, lift me up. I need wisdom, whatever it is. Tell it to him right now. Father, we know that when we cry out to you, you hear us. And you've heard these cries right now. Maybe the world doesn't have a clue as to what we really need, but you know. I pray that you would lay your hand upon that very need in each life. That our eyes will be open to what you're doing. That we would follow you despite the crowd that's trying to push us away. And that we would become the cheerleaders. We would become the ones shouting the highest, the loudest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Father. Blessed is the Son of David who is among us. Blessed is Jesus, our Savior. We pray these things in his precious name. Amen. We have a song, and then as quickly as possibly, if you are interested at all in working with children,